This is Andy Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Darren Barker over Zoom. Darren, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Yeah, good, good. Can't complain. Been busy with the family. A little bit of a break. Got next week to look forward to. Pat Brown, obviously, the debut of the heavy hitting Mank. So yeah, really looking forward to next week. But been good. Thanks for asking.
Right, I'm glad to hear it. Darren, just kind of going straight into it then. Obviously, I'm sure you want to enjoy the rest of your weekend. Eubank Jr., kind of Ben, the big fight is on the horizon. How are you feeling as we draw ever closer to it? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I'm looking forward to it. I am old enough to remember the rivalry between the dads, the biggest rivalry in British boxing history, you'd have to say. Benn and Eubanks are never going to like each other, and that's obvious and evident between the two sons. They just don't get on. I remember when Conor Benn turned pro, and it was one of those. I remember the murmurs from sort of everybody, friends of mine, and people within the industry, sort of saying, "Ah, such a shame that Conor isn't a little bit bigger, so the sons could fight." Could you imagine the event if they was to lock horns? And here we are. They are. Conor's shot up. They found. Um, a weight that suits both, and the event's going to be massive. It really is. Whether you love it or you hate it, whether you love them or you hate them, it's going to split opinion. But the event itself is ginormous. It's enormous. It really is. It's going to leave its mark in British boxing. That's for sure.
On that weight note, for both men, obviously we know recently there's been a lot of talk about Eubank and he struggles to get down to 160, but kind of being the naturally smaller guy trying to move up to that weight as well. Um, for Connor's side and Connor's perspective, what's going to be the key for him in trying to get up to 160, or do you think that they'll maybe still come in a weight beneath that just so that he doesn't give away any of his own
But
attributes?
you got to remember, Connor's going to be coming down from, I don't know, well into the 170s, that's for sure. So he's going to be losing weight to get down to 160. He's not a natural 160, no, but he's still going to be a handful. He's still going to be strong. But his ally in this fight is speed. He's extremely quick with his hands, his feet, and his reactions. And it's about managing that, being smart, being elusive, but picking the correct moments to unleash flurry of shots. For Chris Eubank Jr., me myself having to get down to 160 as you get older, it becomes a lot more difficult. It really does become a push, and it takes its toll on the body. But I don't think the weight's going to be an issue for either. It is a big narrative, it's a big talking point because obviously Chris Eubank, the naturally bigger out of the two, kind of coming up in weight. There's going to be that talking point, but I don't think it's going to be a real issue. There will be obvious signs of Eubank being the bigger out of the two on the night, but look, we've seen it many a times. Smaller guys taking on bigger guys, and um, funny things happen. Funny things happen. Look, the old school saying is a good bigger would always beat a good little than. But we've, I mean, just in recent times, we've seen a good little than beat a good bigger than Usyk twice, beating Fury. These things can happen. I'm not putting Conor and Usyk in the same bracket, but I'm using the size as my example there.
Darren's picking that one back up there, just dealing with your dodgy Wi-Fi, mate. I don't know what's going on with it.
So that
Uh,
one's, I think it's yours, mate.
well, we'll see when the video comes out.
I mean,
But
I've got to pay the bill probably.
as we touched there on the weight front, as we know, we touched on Junior and coming down for Connor, how important will it be to look to work Junior's body early in the fight, try and make inroads in that sense?
Yeah, I've said this numerous times, I think, and not just about this fight in particular. I think all fighters need to vary their attacks. They need to vary their defense. You can't be predictable in this sport. You've got to remember, boxing, there's such a fine line between winning and losing. There's only so much you can do. You know, you've got two arms, two legs, and a brain, and who can use that brain better than the other. And I think variation in all of your work is so important. So yes, attacks to the body going to be paramount. I think the jab crucial. I think out of the two, Conor has the better jab. At times, Eubank Jr.'s jab's been non-existent. We see him starting to use his jab a little bit more under his short time with Roy Jones, but it's a shot that he neglects. So yeah, I think variation, certainly from Conor Benn, is going to be much needed on April 26th.
Obviously, we've seen quite a fiery build-up between the pair. Do you feel like Junior's trying to play up to that, trying to get beneath the skin of Conor Benn and hoping that he just disrupts him and his mentality going through his camp and ultimately leading up to fight night?
Yeah, I think so. That's maturity and experience. That's how you get that into play. And I would think that he thinks he's doing a good job at it. But Conor's naturally fiery. Conor has that bit between his teeth. You know, he's his he's his dad's son. His dad was as fiery as they come, and so was Conor. I think if Chris Eubank Jr. was placid and respectful, I think Conor would still be fiery. But yeah, he's. I would have thought he's won quite a lot of people over, Chris Eubank Jr. Although him and his dad have always been Marmite, you either love him or you hate him. I think where he's been so outspoken and he said things a lot of people probably wouldn't have. People have sort of warmed to him, but you know, there's always a goodie and a villain in a lot of these grudge matches. But this one seems to have really a split opinion. You know, they both have big supporters and they both have big haters, and I can't wait for that. You know, that moment where the referee brings them together in the centre of the ring and then sends them back to their corner. And then that couple of seconds before that first bell, that stadium is going to be on fire. It's going to be electric.
Darren, you'll know Tony Sims as well as anybody within the sport. How important will his role be in trying to make sure Conor doesn't allow his emotions override him on fight night?
Yeah, huge, and he's brilliant at that, Tony. He's so good at centering you and calming you and giving you the right instructions at the right time. And I've said this before: you'd rather have that fire and have to sort of contain it as opposed to go and find it. And Conor has that, and Tony has the task of having to do that with Conor. He has to make sure that he uses that fire and that aggression and that real will to win in the right passages. You can't be reckless in a fight like this against someone like Chris Eubank Jr. But like I say, it's an asset to have that. Some fighters just lack that little bit of oomph, that spite, that, you know, that, I wouldn't say desire, but that fire. And then it becomes a difficult task for the coach. But like I say, I know Tony so well. I'm so close to Tony still now. I was with Tony for 11 years, all through my career, and I couldn't have done what I've done without Tony. And Conor's the same. We did a podcast recently, and he talked about the importance of that man, and that man, Tony, has an important part to play on April 26th.
Darren, just moving away from all things Eubank, Ben, get your thoughts on a few other topics. I was wondering your take on the kick out from Nick Ball last week. What did you make of it?
You got to remind me.
The
Mind got
TJ
blank.
Doheny fight,
Oh yeah. What did I think of the performance?
the kick out in particular. Obviously, some people suggesting maybe he could have been disqualified for it. Maybe should have
Oh,
had
the kick
deducted.
out.
The kick
Sorry,
out, yeah.
that's why. Of course, the kick out. Nah, do you know what? In my opinion, my first instance when I watched it, and I did watch it live, was the referee has played a blinder there. He's grabbed hold of him. He's grabbed hold of him like that, and I'm telling you, he looked like he really had hold of the neck. And then he's just sort of lashed out. In my opinion, I thought fair play, good on the ref. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Some would have seen it differently, but in my opinion, my first instance, and I haven't watched it back. My first instance uh, was the ref had played a blinder. It was good refereeing. You didn't see any complaints from TJ. I think Nick knew he was lucky and shouldn't have done it, but yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, you know. It would have been a lot different, I think, if TJ would have rolled around on the floor and made a big song and a dance about it. But yeah,
The performance itself, Darren, he seemed to be a bit more. I don't want to take anything away from his past performances, but maybe a bit more controlled and measured in his approach this time around from Nick Ball. We used to see more of that constant, relentless, just letting his hands go, but seemed to be a bit more thought behind his work in that fight. Do you think that's fair to say?
yeah, I think so. I think he had respect for TJ Doheny, who boxed well in the early stages, and I kind of predicted that. Really, he's no mug. He took confidence away from that defeat to Inoue. He said in the build-up, didn't he? He took a pound for pound star, if not pound for pound number one. You know, he was saying he outboxed him in those early stages, and you're gonna sometimes you can take confidence away from defeat, and he did so. He come into this fight full of belief, and he boxed well in the early stages. And I think Nick Ball knew that it was going to be tricky, and it was a more measured approach. It was a more switched on, focused Nick Ball, but he got the job done. I thought, I kind of called that. If I'm honest, I thought it would be a similar performance from both and a similar outcome. But he's a very, very good fighter. One of my favourite fighters to watch because, like Connor, he has that bit between his teeth that makes him so exciting. He has that fire. He wants to get stuck in, and it just shows you how disciplined and how controlled he can be, and that comes with experience. So he's becoming now, Nick Ball, a more complete fighter, and it's going to make him a very hard man to beat.
Darren, when we're looking towards the future of Nick Ball, there's been a lot of talk about one man coming up in weight to fight him, and that's Inoue. If we were to see Inoue Ball, uh, how would you rate Nick's chances? And I just want to throw out there, Cole Frampton said to me
I
last
know.
week, I'm trying to remember his exact words, but he said that his style would give Inoue a number of problems.
But he said on the broadcast, didn't he, that he'd favour Nick Ball. I can't see that, if I'm honest. I'd be rooting for Nick Ball, but I'd have Inoue. I wouldn't say massive, huge favourite, but I'd have him a decent favourite. You know what I mean? I would certainly not be betting against him, that's for sure. Um, Inoue is just a monster, exactly what his nickname labels him as. And I think someone like Inoue, yes, he would be stepping up in weight, but I just think he brings his power up numerous divisions. I think the more weight that he has on his frame, the harder it's going to hit. It's obvious, and I think he becomes even more of a problem. Yes, he's going to be giving away height, reach, etc., but at a natural size. But I just think he's going to punch harder, and it's a good fight though. Don't get me wrong; it's a fight I'd really, really be all for. I'd love it, and I think it's a fight that Nick Ball deserves. He deserves these big fights. Anyway, yeah, he's kind of picking and choosing who he wants to fight at the minute. I know Eddie's been screaming and shouting, hasn't he, of late. Wants MJ to get his chance, but yeah, it's one I'm all for.
Also, I need to get your thoughts. What would you rather see? Alexander Usyk, Daniel Dubois 2, or Alexander Usyk versus Joseph Parker?
Parker. I
Why?
think, like for me, I guess Usyk's goal now would be to recapture all the titles again. So I think to vacate one to fight for one, that doesn't really make sense to me. Fulfill your mandatory. All goes well for Usyk. He beats Parker, then go face Dubois if everything aligns. I think, yeah, I think Parker deserves his shot as well. Um, Aside from Usyk and Dubois, Parker's the informed heavyweight, isn't he? Along with Caballero, you would say. Um, but yeah, I would like to see Parker in with Usyk, 100%.
for any fighter who was to face Usyk, it's obviously an incredibly daunting task to try and overcome him. But how would you rate Joe Parker's chances, especially as you say on this run of form that he's found himself on?
It's a tough one, isn't it? But everything is in order as far as Joseph Parker's concerned. His experience, his confidence, his team, his form. He couldn't be in a better position to be facing the best in the world in Usyk. But I have Usyk favourite over everyone, and that could go back generations as well. You give Usyk a hell of a chance against most fighters. He's that good. He's a master. He has so many strings to his bows. The man is a magician. So Parker would have it all to do. But I'm telling you now, if he was ever to get the job done and shock the world, it would be this Joseph Parker.
Joyce Hrgovic is a couple of weeks away. Darren Philip Hrgovic coming in on shorter notice, stepping in to replace Dillian White, but he is the heavy favourite really with the bookies. Do you agree with that? Do you believe that he's a big favourite going into the Joe Joyce fight, despite coming in as a replacement opponent?
Yeah, and look, I think it's the manner in which Joyce lost last time out against an aging Derek Chisora. I mean, it's a fight he should have won really on paper. You would say he didn't. He didn't look great. He looks old himself, and Hrgovic is a very good fighter. Obviously beaten by Dubois, well beaten as well. I was a little bit concerned, if I'm honest, about his kind of inability to be able to hurt the bar. He landed what it must be. You could count on you'd have to say more than 20 right hands he landed on Dubois, and there was no sort of there was no signs of Dubois being hurt. So that's a bit of an aura taken away from Hrgovic. He was this big punching Croatian. Everyone, was frightened of him, and all of a sudden, he was unable to put away the ball or even really hurt him. So I think Joyce would look at that and think, well, maybe he's not a bigger puncher as everyone has made out. But it all depends on the condition of Hrgovic, really. If Joyce can take these shots from Hrgovic, and we've seen that he can be as his nickname says, a juggernaut, keeps coming forward, keeps working, and he's very unorthodox. But the issue with Joyce, he just gets caught far too much. Yeah, and I will be leaning towards Hrgovic if he's fit enough over 12 rounds.
Darren, do you fancy seeing a little bit of Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul?
No.
What have you made
That
of
is
Jake
absolute
calling him
madness.
out
Put
of
it
their
this way,
interactions?
look, surely that can't happen. Let's put this in perspective, right? I've been on the couch for 10 years, 11 years, right? And I'm not saying this because I want to fight Jake Paul. I wouldn't. But I would beat Jake Paul. I'm sorry, I would. You might laugh, but you give me 10 weeks training, I wouldn't even need 10 weeks really. Like I believe I've just been around boxing my whole life. He's a big lump though, and if he was to hit me, I could be in trouble. But he would destroy him in a round or two. But it wouldn't even go beyond the round, would it? If AJ wanted to put him away in the first round, it gets put away in the first round. Stupid. I don't think you'll ever ask me a more stupid question ever. I know it's topical and it's current, but silly.
No, I agree, Darren. I think you'd struggle to find anybody in the boxing world who would say that goes beyond
Imagine.
a round. Yeah, but if he was to go beyond the round, then somebody would probably be making a lot of money on that one. But on the theme of AJ, where do you think he does go next? All joking aside of Jake Paul, what do you think he comes back to?
A big fight, it has to be. I just don't think anything else would get the juices flowing. He's achieved so much. He's earned so much money, more money than he can spend. Um, and I think the challenge has to be that great that he would go in. go into camp scared. He needs that kind of opponent. Um, I mean, I'm still hopeful for the Fury fight, if I'm deadly honest with you. Past
Does the Wilder fight
retirement.
tick any boxes still?
Wilder needs, I think, to really build the trust back from the fans. I think he needs to show us that there is still plenty left. I'm not sure there is, and I don't think that's due to his physical ability. I think it's more his mental ability. I just don't think he wants it anymore. Some watching this may understand what ayahuasca is, and done these tribal ayahuasca ceremonies, and I've had a conversation in depth with him, and he's just kind of content with life, and I don't feel he really wants to box. I don't really know why he's doing it, and so you can sort of hide behind your words and say, yes, I want to do it for this, I want to do it for that. But when the going gets tough, you sort of think, I don't really need to be doing this. And I think, like I say, certainly needs to build the trust back from the fans for a couple of dramatic wins, or one at least, just to sort of say, here I am, I'm back, I mean business, I'm the Wilder of old. Then I can sort of buy into that fight. And having said that, I'd like to see AJ come back with a brutal display against a top contender. But like I say, I'm kind of still believe that Fury will come back, and I think Fury's the same as well. It would have to be a huge fight for him to bother coming out of retirement, and it would have to be, I think, this fight. It would be such a shame if that fight was to never happen, regardless of when. Really, it's gone way past when it should have happened. It should have happened a few years ago when they were both well and truly in their prime, but. I'm still all for it. We can see that, the one that jumps to mind was Amir Khan and Kell Brooks. Still, it was way past when they should have fought, but it put bums on seats, didn't it?
Darren, I spoke to another man you know very well yesterday, Mr. Joe Cordina, and I threw a few names at him, and one which piqued his interest. Obviously, he's still got his hopes on getting back to that world level. Was Josh Padley? What would you make of a Padley Cordina fight?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Big fan of both. Padley, what a story! Incredible story. And I was lucky enough to speak to him. I interviewed him in Saudi before the Stevenson fight, and you know, it's just a remarkable story. It really is. And boxing's full of fantastic narratives, and he certainly created one for himself. And Cordina needs to get back on track, doesn't he? Really, so much talent there. He still wants it. He still has plenty of belief that he can really make a splash in the sport of boxing and win another world title. So yeah, I like that fight. Don't mind that at all.
And just a last one from me, Darren, a bit more of a somber note. Obviously, we all awoke to the news this morning that sadly
Yeah.
Big George Foreman passed away. Just your overriding thoughts, feelings, and just your what you remember about him.
Yeah, I was gutted. Do you know what? I was really, really gutted. And my first thing was, 76 years old. That he's not old, really. When you think of what he's done in his life, he's kept himself healthy and fit, God-fearing person. Yeah, I was gutted. I was in shock as well. But what a fighter. I mean, will go down as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Certainly one half of arguably the greatest event, the greatest fight of all time, the Rumble in the Jungle. And one of the iconic moments for me is when he knocks out Michael Moorer to become the oldest heavyweight world champion. And it showed you how heavy-handed he was with just the way he throws the 1-2, effortless, and just drops Moorer, and the way he drops to his knees after Foreman, just to say, "Wow, I can't believe I've done that," sort of thing. And thanks the Lord. They're giving me goosebumps now. It's all about, for me, leaving your mark on the world and being remembered. And George Foreman will be remembered. He'll never be forgotten. He'll be remembered as a great boxer, a feared man inside of the ring, and a great human being. A great person. Like I say, a God-fearing person, a deeply religious man that spread joy. I think anyone who met him will say what a lovely person he was. And yeah, my love, thoughts to his friends and family.
No, I mean, everybody will echo those calls, thoughts and condolences to everybody who knew him. And yeah, Darren, I'll leave you now to enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for speaking to me, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you in Manchester.
Definitely, take care, mate.